Hi everybody, today we're talking about the triangle sum theorem. And the theorem just is a rule that states the sum of all the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So today I'm going to prove that for you, review how to name triangles, and then do some practice problems. So a review of naming triangles, you need to know that a right angle is 90 degrees, an acute angle is less than 90 degrees, and an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. This one's acute and this one's obtuse. And you can either name triangles by their measure, by the length of their sides, or by both conventions. An acute triangle has all three angles less than 90 degrees. A right triangle has a little box or a 90-degree measure. It can only have one angle that measures 90. An obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees, one angle more than 90. An equilateral triangle has three equal sides. So you might see tick marks like that. You might see angle measures that are exactly the same, or you might see sides that are exactly the same. Well, if the sides are the same, that means their angles are also the same. An isosceles triangle has two sides that are equal, and if two sides are equal, that means, you guessed it, two angles are the same. And in a scalene triangle, none of the sides are the same length, so you might see some marks like that. And that also means that none of the angles are the same length. Come back to this, I would make sure you know the difference between the types of triangles. And these marks are very important, and they're usually on your map test or standardized testing. So to recap, M and N are parallel lines cut by two different transversals here. So in this case, angle 4 plus 1 plus angle 5, they all measure a straight line. And when you measure a straight line, it adds up to 180 degrees. So if I added angle 4, 1, and 5, I get 180 degrees. A measure that has the same angle as 4, these are cut by a transversal, so the alternate interior angles are congruent. So 4 and 2 are exactly the same. The same measure as angle 5, again, I look at the transversal, and the alternate interior are congruent. So measure of angle 3 is also the same. Now since 4 and 2 are the same, and 5 and 3 are the same, if I add 1, 2, which is the same as 4, 3, which is the same as 5, I'll get 180 degrees. So that proves the triangle sum theorem. So the three angles, because there are three sides, and if I were to cut all the angles off a triangle and line them up, they would make a supplementary angle, so they would make a straight line. So let's apply the triangle sum theorem. If you're given a triangle here, I have 73 degrees and 44 degrees and p degrees, I can find the sum. So to start this problem, you want to take what you know. So I know I have 73 degrees and 44 degrees. So I take what I know, and I get 117 degrees. Then to figure out my difference, or what angle is left, I need to subtract 117 from 180. So P is equal to 63 degrees. Do you notice how I wrote that? You could either write it with a degree sign, because in the diagram it has a P degrees, or you are used to writing it like this, which is even better. So I'll accept either answers, but this is probably what you're most used to. Now since all three angles are the same, this is known as a scalene triangle. And all angles are under 90 degrees, so it's a scalene acute triangle. This next example has a right angle. Right away we know this is called a right triangle, but we don't know what measure C is. So to determine measure C, I take what I know, and I subtract that from 180. And I get C is equal to 48 degrees. I could also write it like this. Whenever I have an M, I don't need a degree sign here. I make sure I have it at the end. This is how I prefer it, but this is also acceptable. Let's see if you can pause the video and do this one on your own. So in this triangle, I was given 38 and 88, so I added them together to give a sum of 126. The triangle sum theorem states if I take 126 from 180, I'll get my missing angle, and I got 54 degrees. So you can write your answer either way, as angle A, measure of angle A equals 54 degrees, or A degrees equals 54 degrees. Now it's also good to double check You just take your three answers and you add them together to just make sure you get 180, so you don't make a simple adding or subtracting mistake. So I added my three angles together, I got 180, I know my answer was correct, and I can move on. In this case, I'm given 3 degrees that are exactly the same. They're all B. Don't let that algebra, the letters, fool you. If they're all the same, that means all sides are the same, and this is called an equilateral triangle, so all the angles are going to be the same. So if I have one B plus another B plus another B, I have 1 plus 1 plus 1. I have it into all 3 B's. And if I were to divide both sides by 3, I would get each angle is equal to 60 degrees. So B degrees is 60 degrees, or the measure of angle B is 60 degrees. Now you want to double check your work just to make sure that your answer is correct. So since I have 3 of the same, you can add them 3 times or multiply it by 3 to get an answer of 180. You checked your work, so now you can move on. Now this problem is a little bit more difficult. You have one like this in your application, and this is where you want to go. You read the problem first. The second angle in a triangle is 3 times larger than the first. So angle 2 is 3 times the first. The third angle is 1/3 of the second. Your goal is to find all the angle measures, and you might want to draw a picture. So I started by defining a variable. I picked a letter of x to be the first angle. So I let measure of angle 1 equals x degrees. Now it says the second angle is 3 times larger than the first. Well, how do I write 3 times the first? 3 times x. So I write 3 times x. Measure of angle 3 is 1/3 of the second. So 1/3 of 3x. 3x because it's the second. Well, 1/3 of 3. Of means times. And I can write 3 as a fraction by putting it over 1. So this is equal to 3/3, which is the same as 1, and then I multiply by x, so 1x. Well, that's the same as the first one. So if I add 1x plus 3x plus 1x, I'm going to get 180 degrees. So 1x plus 3x plus 1x equals 180. 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 1 more gets me 5. Now, to solve this problem, what do you need to do? You need to isolate your variable, or divide both sides by 5, and you can use a calculator on this. You get 36. So that means if measure of angle 1 is x, x is 36, that means the measure of angle 1 is 36 degrees. The measure of angle 2 is 3 times x, or 3 times 36. Again, you can use your calculator if you need it, and you get an answer of 108 degrees. And the measure of angle 3 is still 1x, so that's 36 degrees. So you want to double check your work. You add 36, 108, and 36, and you'll get a sum of 180 degrees. So therefore you know each angle. Now since 2 of them are the same, this is called an isosceles triangle because 2 sides are the same. 36 degrees, 36 degrees, and 108 degrees. Obviously this drawing is not proportional, but you get the idea. So now on to some more complex problems. This is where you want to be. And if you added them all up, 2x and x and 90 degrees, you get 180. I like writing a coefficient of a 1 before the x just so I can add them a lot easier. Because 2x plus 1x is 3x, plus 90 is 180. Now to solve this problem, this is a review, you'd have to do a 2-step squiggle. So I subtract 90 from both sides. So I would get 3x is equal to 90 degrees. I divide both sides by 3. I get x is 30 degrees. Now this doesn't answer my question. So x degrees is equal to 30 degrees. But if it's also asking for what 2x is, I need to take 2 and substitute in my 30 for my x. So I get 60 degrees. This one's 30, this one's 60, and then 90, because it's a right angle. So I double check. 30 plus 60 is 90, plus 90 more. I get an answer of 180. So I did my work correctly. I have one last example for you. If you have an isosceles, because these 2 angles are the same, that means these 2 sides are the same. This is an isosceles triangle, and I add 62 plus x. That means I have 62 plus 2 x's equals 180. If I subtract 62 from each side, bring down my 2x, Go ahead and pause the video. And then I need to divide both sides by 2. And I get an answer of 59. Now I want to double check. 62, 59, and 59. I get 180, so therefore I know that x degrees is 59 degrees, or the measure of angle x is 59 degrees. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time. Please see me if you have any questions. Otherwise, go ahead and apply. Thanks. See ya.